What size you wear?
Well, usually XL.
Okay, I'll get you one.
A lab coat, and a t-shirt to wear inside.
Today is Gao Yufa's first day on the job. After getting his uniform, he becomes the youngest member in the entire Nanhai One Heritage Conservation team.
You three go in that direction. Dr. Gao Yufa and I will go this way, alright?
Following lead conservator Li Naixing, Gao Yufa enters for the first time the preservation site of Nanhai One.
Need to check the moisture condition of the wood and see if any mold has appeared.
As a PhD in wood science and technology, he would use modern science and technology to safeguard this 800-year-old historical site.
Our team was first established in 2013. We have many PhDs in various fields. It involves chemistry, materials science, wood science, microbial control, and structural deformation. Because this shipwreck, with its cargo, is a worldwide challenge.
This is a nearly intact comprehensive underwater site, with about 180,000 artifacts unearthed. With a vast quantity of trade goods, and the daily necessities of those aboard the ship, like gold, silver, porcelain, among other things. Nanhai One covers virtually every category of archaeological artifacts. How to extend the life of this millennium-old vessel and preserve everything in their finest state is a case with no precedent to follow. How will the conservation and excavation team confront all those myriad challenges? In 1987, near the Chuanshan Islands in the South China Sea, at nearly 30 meters underwater, Nanhai One was first discovered. This was a busy fishing area. The hull of Nanhai One was entangled in fishing nets. Without effective protective measures, it might face disintegration. Eventually, the Chinese government, in a world-first approach, used a caisson to lift the entire shipwreck.
When the caisson was placed, we couldn't actually see how it went. If it was even slightly misaligned, it could crush or shatter the wooden shipwreck. Even by just brushing against the shipwreck, the enormous force could tear the hull apart.
On December 22, 2007, Nanhai One was lifted after over 800 years on the seabed. On the 28th, it was put into the Crystal Palace, a museum specially built for it. As one of China's first underwater archaeologists, Sun Jian witnessed everything since the discovery of Nanhai One. The moment the shipwreck surfaced, he still remembers it vividly.
These are the measurements we obtained at the time. We can see the boundary line. The ship's port side was extremely close to the caisson wall, only about 20 centimeters. At a depth of nearly 30 meters, on a seabed with zero visibility, placing a caisson of 14 by 40 meters, perfectly around it, was a job done remarkably. At the time, we felt such a huge relief.
Later, the survey data of the shipwreck inside the caisson were also surprising and promising.
These figures show the depth of artifacts below the mud surface. We can see that, in this ship, there was a lot of concretion, 10 or 20 centimeters down. Artifacts began to appear, a consolidated mass of them.
Survey results showed Nanhai One was largely intact below the deck. Both bow and stern were present, Massive concretions surrounded the ship. The stern deckhouse had broken apart and was scattered around the world. An ancient shipwreck as old as Nanhai One, and as well preserved, and fully laden with cargo, has not been found. For the excavation and conservation, there is almost no precedent. After deliberation by experts from multiple fields and on-site testing, 7 years after it was raised, in 2014, the excavation of Nanhai One finally commenced. Under the leadership of Sun Jian, the archaeological team entered the excavation site. An 800-year-old maritime memory, long sealed away, would slowly be revealed. The approach finally adopted was the unprecedented water-saturated excavation. Water level around the caisson would be lowered in sync with the excavation progress. Above the shipwreck, 2 rows of 6 by 6 meter excavation units totaling 12 divided this site with precision. All archaeological team members would work at the same pace in these units to maintain a uniform depth, recovering artifacts layer by layer. Meanwhile, the exposed hull was under constant spray, so that the shipwreck was in a stable environment.
The Nanhai One project has in its name conservation and excavation plan. We put conservation first. It comes foremost. We want to extract the maximum amount of historical information contained in this shipwreck and make sure it can be preserved.
As the former team leader of the Nanhai One archaeological project, Sui Yong worked on underwater archaeology for multiple shipwrecks. He also filmed the only underwater footage of Nanhai One. Underwater shipwreck archaeology mostly involves partial recovery of artifacts. As for the shipwreck itself, archaeologists could only rely on underwater mapping based on visible outlines. It is almost impossible to have a clear and full view of a shipwreck covered by seabed silt.
Back then, what we could see, with our own eyes, was only a small part. But even a small part was amazing enough. After we finally had the full picture, it was breathtaking. We even wanted to stop digging. Truly unforgettable.
When the silt and concretion covering the hull of Nanhai One were cleared layer by layer, a shipwreck that is nearly intact appeared before them. Its many compartments held different categories of goods, whose stacking patterns were visible. The ship looked as if it were frozen in the moment before its departure. Nanhai One, which had slept in the sea for over 800 years, now finally revealed its former appearance. 10 years later, in 2023, the ship, after 800 years slumber in the sea, completed full excavation. The artifacts unearthed far exceeded initial estimates, setting a national record for artifacts unearthed in a single underwater project.
We estimated the integral salvage might yield 60,000 to 80,000 artifacts, but after our full excavation, the final count was over 180,000 pieces, far beyond our anticipation. Early on, we had temporary storerooms at the excavation site. Later, because of the overwhelming quantity, the Maritime Silk Road Museum even had its offices changed into storerooms. We even had to put artifacts in the former office hallways. But we would install vault doors in those hallways too. What we're seeing now are items from compartment 8. Most of them are large jars like this one. Such jars, we recovered over 40 from that compartment. They are probably the largest individual artifacts on the ship. They would often carry inside them smaller porcelain pieces from other kills. The most numerous are small Duhua flared mouth vessels and over 700 small lacquer lids. Now we're sorting compartment 13. This compartment boasts enormous quantities of a single type of vessel. Mainly small bowls from the E-kiln in Fujian. Just these bowls alone amount to over 20,000 pieces. Inside the compartment, they were stacked in piles, truly spectacular.
Since the excavation of Nanhai One began, Hu Siyuan has been here, helping sort unearthed artifacts. After over a decade, this work is still ongoing. The vast amount and wide variety of artifacts and remains provide first-hand materials for the study of ancient Chinese technology, craftsmanship, and trade history. At the same time, they also pose unprecedented challenges for the archaeologists.
After we recover the porcelain, we would gather together the porcelain from the same compartment. First, we do simple rejoining on those fragmented pieces. Then, we measure dimensions of various parts. Take simple photographs. And finally assign numbers. And perform systematic data entry for descriptions of those parts. Each of these processed artifacts will have a QR code label. When we use our handheld devices to scan the QR code, we can retrieve all its information. The name of the artifact, along with other archaeological data, is all there. All this information is uploaded to the server during processing. It can be viewed via handheld devices or web browsers.
Every artifact unearthed from Nanhai One must go through a set of standardized procedures. Just entering one intact artifact into the database takes about 20 minutes. A damaged artifact would need joining. Artifacts in different compartments must be sorted based on their original positions. Processing approximately 180,000 artifacts from this shipwreck requires an incalculable amount of time. This is not just a strict set of operational protocols, it is also archaeologists paying tribute to history.
Some may wonder, with over 100,000 items, does one more or one less really matter? Regardless of size, whether it's fragmented or intact, every single artifact is indispensable to Nanhai One. As archaeologists, we have reverence for every single fragment. Every artifact is history, a testament to our civilization.
What Chen Shursong is cleaning now is some tiny glass beads. These beads are scattered everywhere, in the mud throughout the shipwreck.
When we worked on the surface layer of the hull, we discovered some beads in the mud. Need to wash them out from the mud and pick them out manually. For these tiny beads with their small size, if you look at them for long, you could even get double vision.
This is the caisson used to salvage Nanhai One. Its total volume is about 3,700 cubic meters. Not counting the cargo and hull, the amount of silt involved in the integral salvage exceeds 3,000 tons. And the numerous artifacts and remains of Nanhai One are scattered within it. To extract maximum historical information from the remains within the silt, the archaeological team pioneered the flotation method, soaking and screening over 3,000 tons of silt in the caisson, leaving no trace overlooked.
At first, I tried counting them, one by one. Soon I realized there were just too many. You can see they are uncountable. In the end, we could only do some estimates by weight. To show how small these beads really are, let's compare one of them with a grain of rice, so that you have an idea. We can see the bead is actually smaller than a grain of rice.
The smallest ones have a diameter of less than 1 millimeter. Each has a regular perforation. Such a large quantity provides crucial and sufficient samples for studying glassmaking from over 800 years ago. In addition, with the flotation method, animal bones, plant seeds, gold foil, cinnabar, and many other tiny yet precious remnants of the artifacts from Nanhai One, along with their historical information, are all preserved.
We lifted the ship and the silt, in and around it, all together up here. You can say we have preserved to the greatest extent all those artifacts' information. Through the flotation method, we have obtained tens of thousands of tiny ancient artifacts, which has greatly enriched the variety of items on Nanhai One. All of these artifacts, with everything brought together, reflect comprehensively every facet of Song Dynasty society.
This is a sample of silt mixture extracted from the gaps between porcelain items. After sedimentation and analysis, the debris is most likely not yet fully decomposed rice straw.
When loading cargo onto the ship, for containers of varying sizes, large ones would be nested over small ones to save space. So we suspect. Our first guess is, it is most likely there were gaps in between, and some padding material was placed to prevent damaging.
There is a large quantity and diversity of such organic artifact on Nanhai One, which testifies vividly to the economy and lifestyle in the Southern Song Dynasty. However, they are very prone to degradation and could disappear at any moment. Therefore, since excavation started, conservation has been carried out simultaneously. In 2021, at the Nanhai One excavation site, an object resembling a bamboo basket was found by the archaeologists, extracted intact, and handed over to conservation. During the cleaning up, its structure gradually became clear. Conservators determined it a woven bamboo hat, presumably some crew member's personal item.
Careful, this way. Careful. Okay. Here. Careful. Careful.
Bamboo artifacts from over 800 years ago are rare in archaeological discoveries. This gift of time, preserved aboard Nanhai One in a sealed underwater environment, also gives people today a chance for a glimpse into historical details. However, the time left for us to handle such an organic artifact is sometimes only a few hours.
We can see it is in a poor condition when excavated. The whole thing is in a decayed state. If we don't act quickly, It will soon disappear. Currently, around the world, conservation of organic artifacts is always a challenge. Although we could do our utmost with many human interventions, but just like man would age, these artifacts would always deteriorate slowly. We can only do what we can to maintain their condition, or how they were when first discovered.
The moment an artifact sees the light of day, archaeologists begin a race against time. They hope to preserve in their best possible state these precious artifacts.
This spot here could do with more desalination. Use some solution, see if it can be removed. Like on a straw hat, there are areas with stubborn salt residue. We would use absorbent cotton and prepare the appropriate reagents. Just like applying a face mask to the artifact, we put it on. Desalination is a relatively special step for waterlogged artifacts. For terrestrial ones, it's not mandatory. This should work.
As their conditions upon excavation vary greatly, each organic artifact requires a customized conservation plan. But when it came to the conservation of the largest and structurally most complex organic artifact of the Nanhai One site, the ship hull, people realized it was almost an impossible challenge.
Here are some wooden components of the Nanhai One hull that we have stored. This piece is a sample we took. Its color has basically reverted to its original wood tone. Check its cellulose changes.
Okay, understood.
Now I'll take more samples.
Examining the wood of the Nanhai One hull is something Gao Yufa does every day since he started here.
What's on the screen now is a sample we took from a ship component. These pores are the wood's inherent structural features. From this image, you can see the deformation of the cell walls. Such deformation could cause irreversible distortion to the hull and other components, or even cracking and other damage. This is a sample taken from a component that has not undergone desalination treatment. Its cell walls are now severely degraded, and the fiber content is extremely low. When you pinch it with your fingers, you can just feel. It is currently in a very soft state.
As the largest single wooden structure discovered in Chinese underwater archaeology to date, the Nanhai One ship not only showcases the pinnacle of Song Dynasty shipbuilding, it is also the core and most valuable remains of the entire shipwreck. But due to its 800 years in seawater, this massive wooden structure, once raised to the surface, became the most fragile remains of the whole project. Any severe moisture loss would make it collapse. What is making it worse is the nearly 120 tons of ironware the ship once carried, releasing constantly iron ions into the wood, accelerating corrosion, which is the greatest threat to the hull.
No one could have imagined there would be so much iron, over 100 tons. Nobody expected this at the time. We know that the Nanhai One shipwreck, when 23 meters deep down in the sea, was in an oxygen-free environment. Pressure, temperature, and other environmental factors were relatively stable. But once it was opened up in the museum, it is placed in an oxygen-rich environment. And with so much iron content, redox reactions would quickly occur, producing lots of rust. This has made our shipwreck corrode and degrade much faster than other types of shipwrecks. This piece is all rusted through. You can see this hole, made by the piercing rust. So there is probably no wood substance left. For the rusted-through planks, they have completely mineralized with no cellulose tissue remaining. It means the wood structure is totally replaced by rust.
Under the dual effects of rust corrosion and severely damaged cell structure, the hull suffers almost daily slow but continuous damage. Every day could be its last day. Existing in intact form, finding a truly effective hull conservation plan has become an urgent task for the conservation team. In 1961, the Swedish ship Vasa was lifted after lying on the seabed for over 300 years. After desalination treatment by archaeologists, it was put on display. And one day, more than 10 years later, sulfate crystals appeared out of nowhere on the hull's wooden beams. Later research revealed that at the time, the Vasa contained several tons of unremoved iron compounds, primarily pyrite. They underwent chemical reactions in the air, producing much sulfuric acid.
Without proper dehydration of those iron-sulfur compounds, they acidified again as the temperature and humidity changed. At first they didn't realize such a problem would exist, and it wouldn't be easy to add that missing step. This gave us some lessons to learn from.
Around the globe, conserving wooden shipwrecks is always a challenge. Any oversight could cause irreversible damage.
The one on the right. That's it. If it can't be removed under such intensity, don't force clean it anymore. Wait until next time.
How to control the rust content in the hull, stopping it from reacting with the external environment, and keeping it within proper limits, is precisely the key to preserving Nanhai One.
Now we're preparing a desalination solution for the Nanhai One hull to test it on small sample pieces.
Desalination, desulfurization, and derusting. These steps must be carried out simultaneously. This is a challenge never encountered in global shipwreck hull conservation. The solution need to be tested repeatedly. This is a hull plank sample from Nanhai One. After long-term rust erosion, its surface has long turned deep red, almost scorched black. After soaking it for long in derusting solution, the wood's color gradually changes towards its original tone.
For those small bamboo, wood, and lacquered items, we complete those steps by soaking them in the solution, but the Nanhai One shipwreck is too massive overall.
How to apply to the entire hull? The treatment used on the samples? Would they really have to build a giant container and submerge the entire Nanhai One in the solution?
When we were making plans, we also considered full immersion. But this ship has a molded depth of 3.5 meters, a width of 9 meters, and a length of about 21 meters. For such a large object, how much solution would we need? Each cubic meter could cost several million. The solution would also need constant replacement. It would require an enormous amount of conservation funds, more than we dared to estimate. After screening and evaluation of many conservation plans, and with expert validation, it was ultimately determined that for this shipwreck, we could conserve it by the method of spray application. This efficient circulating operation can help save lots of conservation funds.
Inside the Crystal Palace today, Nanhai One is supported by steel pipes wrapped in plastic, with foam padding at contact points, laid in a crisscross pattern. A closely fitted spray system around the hull sprays the solution regularly. It can clean and decontaminate, and spray evenly desalination, desulfurization, and derusting agents. In the future, it can also deliver solutions for reinforcement and restoration, providing solid support for the hull throughout the stages of conservation.
It may look like just a dense network of pipes, with some spray nozzles spraying water, but it has actually been meticulously designed. The routing of the pipes, the spray flow rate, the selection of nozzles, determination of nozzle angles, their distance from the ship, to ensure effective spray, without causing secondary damage to the hull. We really put a lot of thought into this.
Compared to organic artifacts, inorganic artifacts like porcelain and gold with relatively stable molecular structures unearthed from the shipwreck require only some cleaning and desalination, after which they shall regain their luster.
This equipment, working with appropriate pressure and bubble shearing action, generates tiny bubbles in the aqueous solution at a nanometer scale. They can quickly penetrate into the ceramic body and draw out the salt.
A decade has quietly passed. For the conservation team, the long journey of safeguarding Nanhai One may have only just started. According to the plan, desalination, desulfurization, and derusting of the hull alone would take about 5 years, filling and reinforcement about 10 years, drying about 2 years, restoration about 2 years. The whole journey will span 2 decades. By then, Nanhai One will reappear before the world, in a state closest to its original one back in its own time. However, for the entire Nanhai One conservation effort, 20 years is not the end. This work is destined to be a long marathon, requiring generations of conservators to carry it forward.
It truly has been such a long time. I remember very clearly back then, Nanhai One came ashore right from these waters. Looking back, it's still vivid in my mind.
In November 2025, the Crystal Palace received a special guest, Shan Zhixiang, former head of the National Cultural Heritage Administration. He co-decided the Nanhai One excavation and conservation plan. After the shipwreck was integrally salvaged, this is his first time returning here. Inside this museum, from the various artifacts already on public display, to the ongoing conservation work on the other side of the wall, Nanhai One's integral salvage and excavation and conservation have become a global model for underwater cultural heritage protection.
She's keeping records?
Doing artifact data entry. Artifact data entry.
That's very important.
Pre- and post-restoration photos are both required, and the mapping of artifacts condition.
Some of its historical information, as it was waterlogged, is retained. That's good. I started working at the administration in 2002 and left in 2012, so 10 years. During those 10 years, I witnessed more and deeper found. Underwater heritages getting protected. All of that owes it to experience, gained from Nanhai One. Our ancestors created this foo ship. It has influenced maritime culture around the world.
The Nanhai One project pioneered many explorations in China's underwater archaeology. So, this generation, leading those young scholars in our museum, digging out this maritime Silk Road heritage in those tiny excavation units, that's quite a feat.
I'm so emotional today, seeing this shipwreck.
From commanding the salvage on site to facing the ancient ship now, Shan has witnessed Chinese archaeology's transition from the study of material cultural history to the comprehensive interpretation of ancient society. And Nanhai One is the perfect illustration of this transition.
Hundreds of millions of our people followed closely the salvage of Nanhai One. It is a world wonder. Those artifacts, after 800 years of slumber, saw the light of day again and presented collectively our traditional craftsmanship and techniques. Such grandeur encompasses history, art, and science. And the stories they tell are those of China's history.
Got the bottom.
Got the bottom there, but not here. It's warped under here.
Any sample taken from here?
Leave it be here. Had a sample taken from this mud.
Sample taken? Okay. How deep could it be?
This is a bamboo artifact called Jusu. In our days, we could call it a travel trunk from the Song Dynasty. As bamboo artifacts rarely survive common underground and tomb conditions, such remains are quite rare in Chinese archaeological records. But Nanhai One's unique underwater environment unexpectedly provided a sealed space that lasted 800 years for them. This Jusa before us was excavated from the compartment in the charge of the archaeologist Chen Haotian. It's also an artifact he finds most fascinating.
This part, the upper part, is the lid, the topmost cover. As for the bottom, it's the actual bottom of the Jusa itself. Of course, we hope to find some written information inside, like licenses related to overseas trade or sailing logs.
Opening it up after 800 years brings an unexpected discovery. Inside the Jusa lies an ink stick, carved clearly with 3 characters: Chen Yanhe.
A search for that name from the Song Dynasty returned results. According to this book, Chen Yanhe came to Hainan in 1094 AD from Chuanzhou, Fujian, to serve as a military advisor there.
Is this ink stick from a southern Song shipwreck really connected to Chen Yanhe of the northern Song? If so, who placed it in the Jusa and brought it aboard Nanhai One over a century later?
We can reasonably infer that this kind of Jusa wouldn't have belonged to lower-ranking crew. And we have also found 2 inkstones in the upper layers of the hull. Looking at everything together, it's highly likely that it was a piece of stationery used by officers for writing sailing logs or for certain record-keeping.
Historical artifacts give us a glimpse into the ancients' wisdom and skills, and the names on the artifacts provide us today an opportunity for a dialogue with them across all those centuries. Xiao Dashuan is the current leader of the Nanhai One project, tasked with writing a latest archaeological report. Among a vast sea of information, what touches him most are the names of those common folks in the ink inscriptions on the porcelain, and the stories behind those names.
Wang Shiwu, Li Dayong, Dai,
Lin Shi, Zheng. Names like Cai and Wang appear a lot in documents of Ming and Qing dynasties, terms like boss Cai or boat boss, and other nicknames. The ink inscriptions we've found amount to about 1,000. Indeed, before this shipwreck, never has such a large quantity been found. Might be ordinary folks or common sailors. So many ink marks, about their interconnections, perhaps we can find out more in the future.
The Southern Song's territory covered China's 13 provinces today. The countless goods and daily necessities carried by Nanhai One were closely connected, with kilns, mines, workshops of many regions, across mountains and seas. Kiln workers, blacksmiths, craftsmen, artists, farmers, merchants, officials, sailors, all those countless figures, come to life one by one.
Gold and silverware, and plant and animal remains. Guangzhou again, and Fujian. You can see from this map, the majority of those items from Nanhai One can be linked to the economic and daily life of ordinary people in the southeast coast, and even in some inland regions. For example, gold and silverware from Hangzhou, bronze mirrors, made in Huzhou, and also the Nanhai kiln in Guangdong, a hot topic in recent study, all labeled on the map.
When the goods were loaded, merchants and sailors casually inscribed their names. These ink marks from back then have struck an emotional chord in today's excavation.
Or Xiao Lao San, that's right.
Such a ship as Nanhai One is one that encapsulates the lives of ordinary Southern Song people. All those plain names on the thousands of porcelain pieces all tell stories of their life over 800 years ago.
These ink-inscribed surnames are closely related to those still around today in Fujian and Guangdong, so their descendants could very well be living and thriving in Fujian or other places.
Our itinerary for today is the Nanhai One Museum. That is its casual name I'm using. Its proper name is the Maritime Silk Road Museum.
Today, tourists flood into the museum every day. They walk through modern hallways, trying to catch a glimpse of the shipwreck accident over 800 years ago. And those names left on the porcelain pieces are giving people room for imagination.
Here is written the character Dai. Perhaps those goods were his. What is this one over here? The character Xia. It writes Chen there, right? Everyone take a look here, see if any of your ancestors are here.
Those characters might not be complete, but they feel so close to us ordinary people.
Like a Mr. Zhang or a Uncle Li in your daily life.
That character Chen feels so endearing. I wonder if my ancestors were porcelain makers.
Finding my own surname on the bottom of a porcelain piece. I feel I've found my roots that moment.
A casual inscription from the Song Dynasty represents a real person, a real family. The Nanhai One seems to have become an open millennium-old family register.
Underwater archaeology, even within our profession, used to be a very niche field, but as of today, it has actually become a relatively popular topic. I think the most important thing is, with the progress of Chinese society, our understanding of traditional culture has been improving, or rather, our awareness of our own cultural evolution has greatly increased. This also reflects the rigorous attitude of the Chinese government and people toward cultural heritage.
In August 2022, China's underwater archaeological team, aboard the China-developed Shenhaiyangshi submersible, discovered, in the northern South China Sea, at a depth of around 2,500 meters, a site of shipwreck remains. And 3 shipwrecks.
That, we can better understand it. A key aspect of underwater archaeology is the exchange it reveals. The sea serves as a bridge, the ship the vehicle. It can connect different civilizations and people across different regions.
In 2025, when the sailing season for ships in ancient times arrived, visitors from participating countries of the Belt and Road Initiative came to the Maritime Silk Road Museum. At the site of the Nanhai One shipwreck, they started tracing the tides and civilizations of the past.
To prevent it from collision, but also as a stable form of life. I saw there are many similar underwater objects between Siam disease and then Indonesia, like a ceramic, like a bowl and a jar. It's proof that at the Asian there were like strong connection between China and Indonesia, especially in trading. From the museum, we can learn how China conserve their salvage, their underwater objects, so maybe we can like duplicate it in Indonesia.
Beyond the museum, China's underwater archaeology training courses for Belt and Road Initiative countries are held regularly. These trainees, together with Chinese archaeologists, shall follow the traces of the Silk Road to find exchanges between civilizations lost in time and continue those compelling stories of humanity and sea.